Hey there, I'm Lou Pascal. I am the school social worker in the Manchester City Schools in Manchester, Tennessee. Before I was in my current position, I was a school social worker in the Rutherford County Schools for over 16 years. And while I was there, I worked with Beverly English, and I stay in communication with her, and we continue to talk about school social work, and she always shares wonderful things that are very, very helpful. I know you've had a wonderful experience being in her class, and she asked me to make a video talking about organization for school social workers. And I think the spirit of this was, how do you sort of prioritize what you need to be doing in a school system when things can be really hectic and things can come up spur of the moment that need to be addressed immediately. And so I'm going to give you some thoughts on that, and then I'm also going to kind of give you some practical tips about organization. I love organization and planning, so I'm going to give you some tips on that too. So here are just some thoughts about how to organize yourself as a school social worker. I think one really important thing is to know your role. So school social workers can do so many things. We can do individual counseling, group counseling. We can work with truancy and attendance. We can work in alternative schools. We can work only with special education students and be included in their IEPs. There's so many things that school social workers can be doing. So when I say you need to know your role, you need to be sure that you have clarity about what your administration wants you to do, because people are going to bring different things to you. And if you have that clarity, you know what your administration wants you to be doing, and you probably know some things that they don't want you to be doing. Okay? So I'll give you an example. Right now, we're in the midst of school closures due to COVID-19. I have talked with my administration, and my direct supervisor has been very clear that the priority is to stay in touch with families, be sure that we're asking them if there's anything that they need and trying to connect them with resources to meet those needs. My administration has also been very clear that we are not doing teletherapy. So if a parent or employee of a school system, or maybe even an employee of an outside agency, were to come to me right now and want me to do teletherapy with a student, my first response would have to be, well, that's not a service we're providing at this time. And I could also go back to my administration and check in and say, this is the situation, what would you like my response to be? But right offhand, I can say that is not a service we are providing at this time. So I think it allows you to answer some requests, frankly, by eliminating them, because that's not the direction that your administration wants you to go. So know your role. A second tip is to be sure that you know the roles of other related service providers in your school system. So that could be the people that are in the attendance department. Be sure you know what they do. School counselors, school psychologists, a family resource center, if you have one, know what they do. School nurses, coordinated school health, school resource officers, all of these different groups. Be sure that you know speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. Be sure that you know what those groups do, because behavior specialists, every time I start to make this statement, something else comes to me. But these are all just groups for your list that you may want to consult with them and figure out what they do, because sometimes someone will come to you with a request and it's really more appropriate for another provider to meet that request for a variety of reasons. So know what the other related service providers in your organization do, and know that that's a way that you can get a need met for a student. The same thing can be said for outside agencies. Have a whole lot of familiarity of the outside agencies in your community and know how they can meet needs. Okay? And this is not all about getting out of work at all. It's about knowing what your lane is and staying in it. And if you are not the person to meet a need for someone, having a place to send them to get that need met. Okay, so the reality of school social work, in my experience, is that sometimes your day will fall apart at 8 o'clock. I haven't experienced that a whole lot, but there are days that it happens. And I have this long list and agenda of what I want to get done, and something comes up, and a majority of that will not happen, or none of it will happen. And you just have to be able to come to some acceptance that you're going to have to put some things on a back burner because you've got to deal with this thing that's more pressing. And I'm just going to tell you how it is. Sometimes it's going to fall apart at 8 o'clock. And sometimes you can take care of the need and sort of get yourself back on track of what you had in mind. Sometimes it's going to consume your whole day. That's just the way it is. And don't get me wrong, I'm a person who likes a lot of structure. I like my lists. I like to clear my lists. But you just have to know that's the reality of what can happen. And you have to find a way in your own mind to come to acceptance that that's the way it's going to be sometimes. Okay? And you can do that without getting overwhelmed. I promise you. You can find ways, you can put things into place so that you can keep yourself from getting overwhelmed. It'll be okay, I promise. In school social work, we often have a lot of autonomy. We're not necessarily in an agency where everybody is a social worker. Sometimes we're in the position I'm in now, I'm the only school social worker in my school system, okay? So, and my particular situation is that I've, just been given a lot of freedom to see what needs to be done and take care of it and ask questions when I need to and get the resources that I need to get. But I have a lot of autonomy. I've been given a lot of trust to do what I feel like needs to be done to take care of students and families and move our program forward. So you're often going to have lots of autonomy. So recognize that the tasks on your list, a lot of times you assign them to yourself, okay? So don't get stressed out if you can't finish them as quickly as you'd like, which is something I do a lot. Just know, I put that on my own list and I wanted it done earlier. It's not going to get done earlier. It's okay. Here's another tip that has really, or just a thought that has really served me well over the years, and that is you do what you have to do in order to do what you want to do. Okay, so whatever that role was that your admin told you that they want you to fill, that's what you have to do. If it's seeing kids individually, if it's seeing kids in groups, if it's some sort of initiative that they have that they want you to be doing, those are the things that you have to do. But I'm pretty sure that, especially if you're a lifelong learner, you are going to be encountering things over your years of school social work practice that you want to do, things that excite you, things that you think will be good for families, things that you think will be good for your schools. But you just have to know, you have to be delivering on the things that your administration is requiring of you. You have to be doing a good job with those things in order to get to the things that you want to do. Because if you're not doing a good job with kind of the basics that they gave you, then the things that you want to do are going to get eliminated, or you have to cover those basic functions before you're going to go get to do your passion projects. Okay? you have to learn to say no. And that doesn't mean you're like yelling at folks and blunt and no. And, you can find a way to say no that is not offensive to people. But there are going to be times that you have to say no. That's just the way it is. Either because it's not okay ethically for you to do what they want you to do, or because you don't have the capacity to do it. There can be any number of reasons that you are going to need to say no. But sometimes you're going to have to say no. And you cannot be all things to all people. And a lot of times, social workers, school social workers, that's kind of an innate characteristic that we have, is we are trying to save the world. We're fixers. We're trying to fix everything, but you cannot be all things to all people. That is a sure route to burnout. If that's what you are going to attempt to do, you cannot be all things to all people. So those are just some ideas for how to organize yourself and how not to get overwhelmed with, a lot of the things that are going to be happening. And, one thing that Beverly and I have discussed over the years is that, you probably are always going to be busy as a school social worker. That's just the way it is. You're always going to see things that you think need to be done, needs that you think need to be met. You're always going to have ideas of how to do that. And if you're a go-getter and a self-starter, you're always going to be busy. If you're a lifelong learner, you're always going to be busy. One time that you may not be busy is in that first year of school social work practice. People might not know you're there. They might not know you very well, and they might not reach out to you as much. So I would encourage you, just know that can happen. Don't be frustrated. Don't be upset. Don't think you're doing a bad job. It's just sort of a thing that happens, is that first year you might not get as many requests as you will once people know you, and once people have it in their minds that, oh, we can get in touch with our school social worker to help us with this. So I don't know exactly what this means for you, but I just would suggest to you, know that that's probably going to happen, that you may not be super busy in that first year, that first semester, and make up your mind to use your time wisely during that time. Get yourself organized. That would be a wonderful time to be finding out what everybody else in your organization does. Be a great time to be reading a lot of research articles, especially trying to figure out what are evidence-based practices. Just keep in mind that you may have a sort of a, I hate to say it this way, but calm before the storm. And make up your mind to take advantage of that time. You may want to watch some things on YouTube. There's any number of things that you can be doing to build your skills, build your knowledge during that sort of slow time before people really know to call you, okay? So here are some hacks that may help you and sort of decrease the overwhelm when everybody needs something and they all needed it yesterday, okay? When you are familiarizing yourself with resources in your community, find a way to organize that stuff in a way that works for you. So if it's in a file cabinet, if you're a paper person and it's in a file cabinet and you want to be able to reach in there and grab it, fine. Find a way to organize yourself. Find a system. I am not that person. So what I did is, several years ago, we had these file cabinets with all these folders of papers, and that wasn't my thing. So I had gone to an in-service about a website called Porta-Portal, and that is exactly what it sounds like to you. That's exactly why they named it that, Porta-Portal. But it's a very simple website, and it allows you to categorize things. And so if you're putting your resources on there, it might be, food distribution programs. It might be housing options, any number of options for families that need diapers, any number of things that you might put into categories that can help your students or families, okay? And on that website, everything can go in a category, and then each entry you can link to a website, and you can also put in some wording like, for more information, call blah, blah, blah phone number, okay? So that's how I chose to organize my resources. I also chose to link that to a QR code so I can give people the web address, and I do give it out, but I also have linked it to a QR code so that people can just scan it with their phone and it takes them right to that site. And so that site's available 24/7. Parents, families, teachers, anybody can look at it at any time. And I am more than happy for them to send people to me and refer people to me for me to help them with those linkages to different agencies. But if somebody just needs to know who does that and what their phone number is or what their website is, that's a quick way for them to be able to get it without having to wait on me. Okay. Another thing about that website is it can always be changed. So we can take things off that are not in service anymore, and we can add new things as they become available. So the big idea is just find a way to organize your resources in a way that works for you, in a way that you're going to quickly be able to get to, what you need in the moment. I've seen people do it just on a big list. I've seen Excel spreadsheets. You could put a bunch of stuff in a Dropbox or Evernote or any kind of, notebook type situation like that. Just have that as an idea in the back of your mind, though, that you're going to need to figure that stuff out and you're going to need to organize it in a way that you can quickly put your finger on it. Okay. One thing that's been really helpful for me is template emails. And you can do this in Office 365. You can do it in Gmail. I've done it in both. So if you have those questions that you get over and over and over and over again, I would suggest for you to make yourself a template email of what your response is. So I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I was working on Special Olympics, I always had people email me about being a volunteer for Special Olympics. And there was a procedure that they had to go through, and I answered that question so many times. So I finally made myself a template email. Thank you for being interested. Here you need to take step 1, 2, 3. Here's a Sign Up Genius for you to go sign up for the job that you want to do on that day. And I just had that in my folder and I was able to send it out. So that's a way to save some time for yourself. You may have to tweak it a little bit, but you have the majority of the wording there. And that's just one way to sort of, I guess in the tech world, they say automate your workflow. So if there are things that you're doing over and over and over again, find ways to reduce the time that takes. Okay. So that's another hack for you. Now I want to talk about planners. I am a planning girl. I love my planner. So I want to talk to you about some things about planners. Now, this is not a commercial for the particular planner that I use. This is not an ad, but I'm going to use that one because that's what I do. And that's the only way I know how to talk to you about it. So the planner that I use, I just got the new one today. It's called Get to Workbook. Get to Workbook. And it is made by Elise Blaha Kripe. So you can just go to gettoworkbook.com if you are interested in this. She's got a lot of videos about what Get to Workbook is. She's got some tutorials about how to set it up, and also if you're not sure that you would like it, sometimes she puts old planners up where you can just kind of buy those as a sample to see if you would use it. And I think this is the 3rd year that I'm going to be using this. The first year I bought an unbound planner and I just had it spiral bound at the office store, and I used it like that for a few months to see if I was really going to like it, and I did. So this is my hot mess express of a Get to Workbook that I'm finishing up for this year, but this is the new pretty untouched version. And what I particularly like about this one, and this is all personality. Number one, I tried to do a electronic online calendar for a lot of years and it was okay, but I found myself being frustrated because sometimes things would get scrunched up and I couldn't see it all, and I just didn't want to go through a lot of different steps to be able to see it all. I didn't want to change from month to day or whatever. So this allows me to be able to see everything. And I think that's a major point, is do not let yourself be planner shamed. If you don't like online calendars, don't use them. Now, if you're in a workplace and they mandate a certain something, then you might have to go along with that. But, let people put things on your online calendar, and you stay up to date with what's on there. But whatever format works for you, even if it's a little more work to have it in 2 places, use the format that works for you. Use paper if that's what works for you. One of the reasons that I like to use paper is because for some, I'm sure it's a neurological characteristic, but there's just something about writing something down that cements it in my brain. I might not go back and ever read that thing again. I might not memorize it, but I wrote it down, and so I know I'm more likely to remember it. And just writing it down is just something that's very beneficial for me. So find what works for you, use it. Don't let anybody planner shame you. If you are not one of those planner decorators with all the stickers and the colors and all that kind of stuff, or a bullet journal person, don't do any of that kind of stuff. You don't have to force yourself into those boxes. If you are that person, bujo and decorate your planner to your heart's content. So one of the big tips that I read several years ago that I thought was really good, and I'm still sort of implementing this in my life, is not to have a separate to-do list and then your calendar. This was an article in like Forbes or something. It was like 10 things that the most successful people do or something. I can't remember, but it really impacted me. They said, do not have a to-do list. Just go to your planner and schedule a time to do those tasks. So it's still sort of a list in your planner, but you can just go to, one thing that I do is when I'm ending one semester, I will go to the first day of the next school year. When I'm ending a school year, I'll go to the first day of the next school year, and I'll just like write down my day 1 tasks while it's on my mind. It might be May, but I might be it might be May, but I might know that in late July, early August, I'm going to need to do, these 3 tasks. And so I'll just go ahead and write them down, and they're on my first day when I come back. And so I'll look at that and I will not forget to do those things. Okay. One thing you can put on there is to take the ProQual. That is the Professional Quality of Life Assessment. And that will help you to kind of assess where you're at in terms of burnout. You can Google that. I know Beverly has shared some of my videos with y'all, and she might have shared that one. So if you don't know what the ProQual is, go to ProQual.com, look into that. And they suggest that you take it every 6 months. Okay, so what I do as a school social worker is I just take it at the beginning of every semester. Okay, so put that on your day 1 tasks. When you've put your tasks on your planner, when they're done, highlight them. I use a highlighter. Doesn't matter what color, whatever color makes you happy, but I just highlight them, and then that way I know it's done. And whether that's a personal task or a work task. If I have to go to a meeting, sometimes I will find a page in my planner, especially since you're a school person. It might be a page during the summer months. I'll just find a page in my planner and I'll write notes from that meeting. Okay. Or a conference session or whatever. So I'll have those notes there. I have a place to write it. I don't have to bring extra paper or whatever. And it's in that same planner with everything else that went on that year. So that's something that I found to be helpful. Calendar pages that I'm not going to use, I just turn them into notes pages for meetings or conference sessions. I personally put my grocery list on Saturday and Sunday. So like on this, let me show you a page. So here's this one has week spreads. So there on Saturday and Sunday, that's where I will be writing my grocery list. Just because that's the way I live my life. I don't usually have a whole lot going on Saturday and Sunday, so there's not a whole lot of things I need to write on that day. And it just, first of all, a lot of times I'll think of what I need at the grocery store while I'm working, so it's right there in my planner. It's a convenient place to write it down, and it keeps me from having to have a separate notebook or piece of paper or whatever. I'm probably going to have my planner with me most of the time, so there's my grocery list. Lastly, and this is super, super important, you guys know that I'm very big on self care. I'm doing a self care series on YouTube during the school closures for COVID-19. If I were you, I would make appointments with myself for my self care. Figure out what your self care is, what self care means to you in your life. Make an appointment with yourself in your planner. So if that's exercise, write it down in your planner. You are going to keep those appointments that you have with other people in your planner, and writing it down in your planner as an appointment gives weight to it that this is something important. It's it's just you, but give it that same weight that you give appointments that you have with other people, and be sure you get those things done. So hope that was helpful. Those are my thoughts about organization and trying not to get overwhelmed as a school social worker. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with y'all, and appreciate you watching this. Thanks. I know you guys are going to have a lot of success as school social workers, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to do.